Trigger warning. This podcast is about grief. Whether you are newly bereaved or whether you have been stuck in grief for years, I do hope this podcast brings you some comfort. Grief is such a universal experience, but we all do it differently. This podcast is not about fixing you or forcing the healing process, because there is no cure for grief. It can only be absorbed, experienced, loved and cared for. So whether you are doing it privately behind closed doors, or like me, you are kicking and screaming your way through, let's support each other. This is a safe space where we can come together and share experiences. My hope is that this podcast shines a light on your path and gives you the strength to navigate your way through the grieving process. My name is Louise Bates, and I'm so pleased we connected. I'm looking forward to interviewing people who have also walked this path to find out what worked for them, in the hope that it helps you too. I'm sending you so much love and support, and I look forward to sharing this crazy journey with you. Hello and welcome to this episode of A Gift for Grief. And today I am delighted to have Alan Cox in the studio. Alan is a widower. His late wife Jenny died almost 3 years ago following a sudden heart attack. I met Alan and Jenny many years ago when I attended one of their talks about the balance procedure, which Jenny created. Now, the balance procedure is a powerful, quick and easy tool to use to create calm, peace and balance in your body. And I'm sure we will talk about this. But before we start, Alan, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about yourself, how you met Jenny and how your lives panned out together.
Oh my goodness, that's a big question.
It is a big question.
Yes, well, I first met Jenny many years ago when I was friends with her brother. We lived in Coventry at the time. She lived in a place called Southam and I lived in Coventry. And we got together when she was the Carnival Queen of Southam, of all things. Oh. And one thing I always mention now, I was always madly in love with her. I knew her through her brother for a few years. She was slightly older than me, a year older in school. And I always, wished I could go out with her, thinking I have no chance. And on the Carnival Queen night, I asked her for a date for the next following week, and she said yes. And I actually put this in the eulogy. I said, I pinched myself that day, and I've pinched myself every day since, because I really mean that we were so happily married, it's untrue. So we had 2 children, now 3 grandsons, and we always worked together, whatever it was. In the balance procedure before that, we had pubs, taxi driving. She'd help me with the taxi, and we got into holistics. I would help her there with that. Meditation starting off with, and then just roller coasted along. And it was inevitable that we made our own technique, the balance procedure. That started around about 2008, and it goes on to this day. Just over 2.5 years ago, we used to be Nordic walkers instructors. And we used to go for a walk every other day when we were living just outside Peterborough in the country. And we were walking on the Thursday afternoon, done a 3-mile walk. We just finished the walk, and about half a mile to go, and she got a bit tired, so we sat on a wall. So I said, look, stay there. Her phone was ringing. I said, answer the phone. I said, I'll run up and get the car. So I came back, and again, she was okay. Gets in the car, we went home. And it was just, 2022, the National Health Service was still very difficult to see a doctor, so we were sort of ignoring everything. She felt a little bit off all day, and nothing didn't seem to be too serious. Eventually, though, by the late afternoon, I said, look, let's go to the doctors, the hospital. I said, we'll get in and see what they say, just in case there's something more serious. And that's what we did. With restrictions, I couldn't go in with her, so she went in on her own. And next thing you know, she's phoned me up. They're taking me in. She was booked in to have one of these ECG exams, which is the thing you put up your arm and they check your heart. Well, I had one about 6 years previously. So again, we weren't particularly worried because when I had mine, it was fine and nothing wrong. And like I said, I'm still here, and it was fine. So we chatted around. I left about 7 o'clock. She spoke to my son and my daughter, reassuring them. She was holding court with the nurses, which is Jenny's way. Everybody was sitting around. She was telling them all about the balance procedure. Again, anybody who knows Jenny will understand what I'm saying here. You know, she always got people flocking around her. And according to one of the nurses, I spoke to the nurse later, she said all of a sudden she took a deep breath and just went.
Wow.
And they had a big crash team come running in. They had all these people, you know, had her on a heart pump, trying to get her heart to start again. I got a phone call, obviously. I arrived 25 or so minutes later, and as soon as I walked in the room, you could see, you know, she was gone. So and it was a little bit barbaric what they were doing. I didn't like it, so I said to the doctor, I said, I called her over. I said, look, I said, I want you to turn this off. I said, she said, we'll give it 2 more minutes. So I said, okay, but then we'll turn it off. Mm. And that was. So we actually made our goodbyes then, because we both worked the last 8 or so years, Jenny and I, were in the funeral business. Jenny was a celebrant, and we did around about 250 funerals. She would stand on the pulpit or the crematorium and do the service, and I would write the eulogies. We'd both visit the families, you know, and I would be with her again during the service and after the service, where people would come up to us and talk to us and the families. And so you see all the grief going on and the different ways people handle things. And we made the decision through chatting on the way back from most of the funerals, you know, saying things like, well, I definitely wouldn't do that, and I don't want a big fancy funeral like that. And we made this decision between us. So when it comes to when it comes to my turn to bury Jenny, I decided to have a direct funeral, which we both agreed would be both our ways of doing it. And that just means that the person who died gets picked up from where they are at the hospital, in Jenny's case, brought to the funeral home and brought straight to the crematorium. And then, you know, you get the ashes back, basically. It sounds a bit harsh, and it sounds a bit, shouldn't you have had a bigger celebration for her and all that? But we did have a celebration a month or so later. About 200 people turned up, and it gave me a chance. I read the eulogy I wrote for her. I read that out, and all these people were there, and it was nice. Yeah. It was nice, but we didn't have the actual funeral service itself because, like I said, in all the years we were doing funerals, we didn't like it. We didn't agree with the whole process, to be honest. But we always made our funerals special, like bespoke to the people who passed and the family. Yeah, you did what the family wanted. But the cars and the horses and the white coffin and it was just too much, and we never really agreed with that. So we stepped away from that. But these types of funerals now are becoming more popular, aren't they? There's pure cremation, exactly. And it's a lot cheaper. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is, but there is a downside to it, because a lot of people feel such a guilt by not doing what the official thing is, you know. Okay. You have I've talked to people who have to direct funerals, and they really don't like doing it because they feel they're not being generous. They're not respecting the person who died. They think they should give them a better send-off. But that's just society, isn't it? The person that died, if that's what they wanted, then people should honour that decision and accept that. You don't always get the chance to make that decision, you know. It's normally decided by the people who are left, and of course with these funeral plans, you're given this amount of money as well, you know, that could be 7,000, and that generally gets spent. I mean, I've yet to see anybody walk away with change after a funeral. You know, you go to the funeral director and you've got a funeral plan, you know, by hook or by crook, you'll end up spending it. Yeah. And that tends to be the guiding factor. You know, if you don't do the funeral properly, if you want to call it that, then you end up feeling a bit guilty by not doing it. You think, I should have done better, and I wish we could have afforded more. But really, to me, the direct funeral to me is the way forward. It makes no sense, the rest of it. I mean, it's I don't know. It's a hard one. It's a hard one to call because people do things differently. Yeah.
And everybody's got them. It's such a difficult time to think about these things, isn't it? But at least because of the type of work that you and Jenny did, you had those conversations.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people avoid these conversations. And when a loved one passes away, they're not sure what they want to have. So it's good that you and Jenny were able to have those conversations and you knew how to proceed.
Yeah, I understand also that not many people will have the chance to do what we did.
Yeah.
So they are coming from a different place.
Yeah.
So I think there's more conversation needs to be had on this whole subject.
Definitely. So it must have been an enormous shock losing Jenny so suddenly. And she hadn't been ill for a few weeks.
Not
There were
at all.
no signs that things weren't
Absolutely
right.
nothing.
How do you process that, Alan? Especially after the type of relationship that you had with Jenny. I mean, I don't know a couple that could have been more in love with each other. And then to lose your partner in such a sudden way.
Yeah, I understand that. And I'll tell you what it was. I'll tell you one of the reasons why. The funerals we did, we often see somebody in the family has a massive breakdown. Whether it's the son, the daughter, whoever. There's always somebody in the family group has a. You can't even call it over the top. It's their way of dealing with it. And I used to question that. I think, why are they getting so? And I would talk to him. I said, I remember saying to one guy, he was having a terrible time with it, and it was crying and making a real. So I put my arm around him, got him away from the rest of the family because he was he was in a bad way. I took him for a little walk outside. I said to him, son, he must be very close to your mum. I think it was his mum. He said, he must be very close to your mum to be. No, his dad. He said, he must be very close to your dad to feel like you are. I said, no, not at all. He said, we hated each other.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, my goodness, you'd have thought that would be even less reason to have that effect. But that was the truth of it. And it was often that the people who had the worst breakdown, if you want to call it that, or the worst, they seemed to be the one who didn't have the great relationship. So it was all, I wish we had done this more.
Yeah.
I wish I had realised how poorly he was and I'd been round for him.
Yeah.
Them sort of conversations. And I think it's the guilt of that makes it worse for them.
Yeah.
And I remember another couple, there was a couple of really elderly people. We had a little run of them. We had little runs to funerals where you'd have youngsters and then a few older, mainly older people. But I remember this one particular lady. She was 86 years of age, been married for 60 years, 62 years I think it was. And her husband died. And I was speaking to her about it, and she's so calm. She was absolutely so calm. I said, it's wonderful that you're so calm about everything. She said, well, I love my husband. She said, I had the happiest years of my life with my husband. I can't feel bad about him dying. I mean, of his age, and of course, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
None of us live forever. And she said, I just don't want to sully I don't want to sully our relationship by having this massive breakdown. So
Okay.
I'm just taking it in with stride, and that's how she handled it. And that's exactly what I did.
That is amazing. So you spent a lot of time with bereaved families, supporting Jenny in her work as a celebrant. And obviously it's given you valuable insights into, this complex world of grief. So your interactions with these bereaved families have obviously influenced your grief journey as well, would you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's another thing I've got a bit of a issue with, is the word grief.
Okay.
Yeah, because when you say you're grieving, to me, you're putting a barrier up. If somebody says to me, I'm grieving.
Yeah.
And you're saying, how do you answer the first question? How do you say, is it how much are you grieving, or are you grieving enough? Are you grieving too much? You see, you can't ask those questions.
No.
Now, I'm thinking about this when I got talking to you about this, and I know what I just said about the old lady and how I handled it, and I'm thinking to myself, what's causing this? And I read this. I looked up the grief in the Oxford Dictionary. Grief means intense sadness.
Yeah.
So if you were to say to somebody who's grieving, and they say, how are you feeling? I feel intensely sad that my partner died.
Yeah.
it leaves you an opening. Is there anything we can do for you to help you with that?
Yeah.
I don't know. What would you suggest? Well, would you like to come for a walk with me once every now and again, or you want to call me if you want to call me? You see, you haven't got that word grief put in there. I think the word grief has turned grief into sort of a condition, as if people have got like depression.
Yes.
Or even like you've developed cancer, so you can't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because it's so important. I've got this grief. And it just puts a barrier between you and asking any questions.
Yeah.
But when you call it an intense,
Intense sadness.
Exactly, intense sadness.
Yeah.
It makes it whole. That's what it actually means. That's the word actually means, intense sadness. Then you can say, well, yes, I got this intense sadness. I wonder if there's any way we could reduce that for you. Anything we could take, is there something we can do? And it opens the door for conversation.
I like this. Yeah, I like that
And
explanation. I actually wrote a blog that said, I'm not grieving, I'm transforming. Because, again, it just changes the whole energy around that intense sadness. So it looks at it in a different way, because I think grief, especially in this country, society doesn't like to talk about it. So if we perhaps change the language around it, it can open it up for
I think it's badly needed. I think it's badly needed.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I don't know how you can talk about grief. I really don't, because, like I say, I've not been accused of it, but somebody said to me, you're remarkably calm about your wife dying so quickly like that.
Yeah.
Why aren't you throwing yourself on the funeral pyre?
Yeah.
And I explain why. But to other people, that seems like I'm cold or something. Or I've seen people grieving 10, 20 years down the line. Yeah. Why are you still grieving? Well, that's personal to me. Grief's my grief. It becomes like a condition.
Yeah.
And it's not a condition, it's a word. Yeah. It's something you can change. It's an emotion. So if you're feeling something, you can change it. But when you call yourself something,
I think it keeps people stuck.
It does definitely.
Yeah.
So that's worth it.
Do you know, Jenny was like a little dynamo. There was no stopping Jenny. I joined her Nordic walking group on a few occasions. We walked around Coventry Memorial Park.
That's right. Yeah.
And, she was just so passionate. She just got a lovely energy about her. And she was into so many things. Exactly. And then she created this balance procedure. And I did your training and became a practitioner. But could you explain to our listeners what the balance procedure is and how Jenny created it? Mm-hmm.
Well, we both created it.
Yeah.
What it works on, you see, when you have a problem or an issue, we can go on back to this grief thing again if you like, and you go and see somebody, like a therapist or whatever, or psychiatrist or psychologist, and it's always about, let's think where it could come from. Where did it start? Let's see if we can untangle the mystery of your past and make you feel better about things, and then bring that forward. So it's always about trawling the past, and I've never been comfortable with that.
Okay.
I've done EFT and NLP and other things, but I've never really been happy with that aspect of it. So when we started working with the balance procedure, the first thing we have to realise that we're all energy. We've got these energy lines running through us. We've got numerology as an influence on us. Our zodiac sign has an influence on us. There's chakras. There's all these different things that we have going on. So color therapy works. We have symbols. We have all these different in the cards that we use. So, but the main thing is we're looking towards what we want. So this is why grief again gets in the way. If you're grieving and you don't want to grieve, then you say, well, what is it you want? Then it's always, I don't want this. Now you can't ask for a negative in your subconscious. You have to ask for a positive, or you don't get it. So people will say, oh, I want him to change. I want that to be different. I don't want to hear that anymore. But instead of saying, actually, what I really want is to feel better. I want to feel calm, relaxed and positive about everything in my life. It's a forward-thinking thing. Then you check yourself by standing up with the cards on your heart center, which is the top of your chest, and your body will respond to that question in your subconscious mind. It'll either send you feeling that you're going to fall backwards or a feeling you're going to move forward. if you move forward, that means that your subconscious thoughts and your conscious thoughts are in alignment. I want to feel calm, relaxed, and positive. Yes, so do I, basically. Like the mind's in two different places.
Yeah.
So you both move forward together. And you'll find that things change.
So is that like using a type of kinesiology? So you're communicating with your body?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. It comes from, everything in the balance procedure comes from other things we've learned.
Yeah.
And we have a list in the book. There's about 20 different things of NLP, EFT, all these acronyms. And we did all this stuff together, and we picked the best bits of everything and come up with our own take on things. But mainly, the main thing always was looking forward, never this crawl in the past. And it's much more than that. I mean, you've got to go through the book, go through it page by page, and you add in what's my personal year number, what's my husband's personal year number. This is the reason why we're not getting on. I'm a number one for instance. I'm a number one at the moment. I'm looking for something new. I'm looking forward to new challenges. He's a number 6. He's more about settling down, being,
Yeah.
and you're wondering why you're having a bit of a conflict. He doesn't want to move because he's happy doing what he's doing. I want to move because I'm not. I want to move forward. So if you figure out your numerology, you can find out different aspects of both of why you feel that way.
Yeah.
Put them together and say, what we want is this, and you can balance your cards to bring the energy together.
Yeah.
And often it can put together like some real people who've had massive differences all their lives can suddenly say, oh gosh, I can see why we're always at odds with each other. Our numerology isn't matching up, so we can match that up in our energy. It'll happen for you in the real world, and it's very, very effective. And as you know yourself, you can get past all sorts of things. You can have, whatever it is, the problem, as long as you can put a positive trait on it. I want to have this instead. I want to do this, and then you get drawn into that. Then things change very, very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I've got personal experience of working with it. Having done the course and become a practitioner, it completely took my life to another level. Mm-hmm. And it just, it helps you to focus, like you say, on what you want. So you're moving in the right direction. And I just absolutely loved it. And I stopped working with it when Matthew was diagnosed with cancer. Mm-hmm. Because suddenly all my thoughts and energy went into supporting him. But I have got the cards out again recently, and I'm starting to get back into it because I know that when I was in that place, I was living this life of complete gratitude and love, and how much better can my life get, because it was just so incredible. And I'm 8 years down the road from Matthew dying, and I'm at a place where, can I get back to that place? I'm still not sure if I can, but I know that the cards will certainly support me in moving in that direction.
That's good, yeah.
So I absolutely love the cards. So, inviting you to be a guest on my podcast, I was so excited when you accepted. It has motivated me to sort of dust the cobwebs off the cards and get them out again and start working with them. So, yes. Did you use the balance procedure to help you with your intense sadness?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I had them clamped on my chest, to be honest with you.
Yes. Yeah.
I did, yeah. I've actually come up with something else as well. I've got a new thing I brought out called the balance labyrinth.
Okay, this technique. Is so. Yeah, I've not heard of this.
Something I come up with. And what I was going back a little bit, what I said earlier about other techniques, trawling the past. This is called finding things in your subconscious mind, past lives even, or they have all these different labels.
Yeah.
Now I call those shadow memories. So we're all, when we're born, like as a baby, you've got, you're wide awake, you want to be, you're looking forward. And in the first 7 years of your life, you pick up all this information, how to run, how to walk, how to talk, how to behave. But then you're getting things thrown at you. Things like fear. Now, fear is a big one. Even the baby, when they're first born, mind the baby's head, be careful. This is all energy, and that's going into the baby. She's learning how to be fearful. They're learning how to be fearful.
Being
right from the bat.
programmed, aren't they?
Exactly. And then as you move forward, things like, we're getting bullied at school, not doing so well at something, maybe getting a bad report. These are all, I call them like filters. They become a filter, a dark filter in your life. So you have more and more dark filters. And at the same time, you've got all the good upbringing, nice parents. They're all the clear filters. So they run side by side. And then when you're, say, right through your life, this happens. Some people get really badly affected by things. I mean, as an example, when I was 7, we moved from Ireland to Coventry, and I used to write left-handed. I was at school since I was 4 in Dublin. And when we went to Coventry, the first minute of the first day, I got a cane across my knuckles and says, "Write with your right hand."
Oh dear.
And if anybody's seen the King's Speech, that movie, King George, he had exactly the same thing with his, and it can develop a stammer. Now, I had that for years, and that was just one shadow memory of mine that comes out. I mean, there's loads, we all have thousands of them. So when you're, like an instance, say for instance, you're a grown up, you're going through life, you've got a nice job, you're happy enough going what you're doing, and your boss says to you, "Oh, I want you to do a speech for me, a talk to these people," and suddenly you look through your filters. You remember the time in school where you put your hand up and asked teacher. You remember the time where, you know what I'm saying? All these things start coming into play.
Absolutely. I can resonate with that. Because public speaking is my biggest fear. I'm quite comfortable behind a microphone. Put me in front of an audience.
It's one of the 7. It's one of the 7 fears. It's in fact, apparently the fear of dying is the biggest one, and the fear of public speaking is the second. You'd have thought illness and all the other ones would come first, but
you'd think so, wouldn't you? Yeah.
But it's public speaking, and that comes up with a lot of people. So in the balance procedure, we do. If you have a specific like that, you'd think, right, what do I want with this public speaking? Then you picture yourself making a good job of it. You know what you're talking about. You've got the knowledge of it. You want to just be able to be calm, relaxed and positive. I know what I'm doing. You see yourself doing it. You use your cards till you come forward. So you've got an absolute nailed in shadow memory that you're working on.
Yeah.
And that will go as soon as you start moving towards what you want. You'll make your public speaking. You'll do a good job. And that shadow memory will never come back. That's generally what happens.
You become in alignment with what you want.
Exactly.
It sounds really simple, and it is, isn't it?
It is that simple, but the thing is, it works very well if you can think of something you want to do. Yeah. Now, I've seen people, and this is where the grief comes in again. I've seen people with depression. I've seen people with addictions, these real deep-rooted conditions, and they just can't shift it. I've been depressed myself, so I know what that's like.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible feeling. And I think grief comes into that as well. These things are really deep in our subconscious. You can't always pick how to get out of it. You can't say, I don't want to be depressed anymore. You have to take small chips away. This is what they all recommend. You go running, or you go walk in nature, or you do something just to shift the energy a little bit. But it's very difficult to get to the core of it. And this is what I thought about this, the labyrinth idea. Now, labyrinth to me is something, again, Jenny and I we used to have a tandem push bike. Did I ever tell you about a tandem?
No.
We had a tandem push bike for years. I used to go cycling in the country.
Of course you did.
Of course, but everybody does. And, there's a labyrinth in a place called Hilton, about 15 miles from Cambridge. It was one of our destinations. We'd cycle to Hilton, walk the labyrinth, and the labyrinths are like a maze.
Yeah.
In fact, I went to see one this morning. It's not being built yet. The St. James's Church is building one.
Where's that?
Here in Leamington.
Oh, I didn't know
I read
that.
it. I put in, before I come here, because I knew I'd have a few hours beforehand, I says, any labyrinths in Leamington? And this one came up, and they're still working on it. So when the vicar was there today telling me that they haven't paid for it yet. So it's
Oh,
ongoing.
I'll check that out then.
Yeah, St. James's Church. Cool. Anyway, so by the by. So I used to go to this labyrinth. Now, I looked at it. We're in this field. It's not a particularly good labyrinth. It's shaped like a maze. And you walk the labyrinth. You walk in with your problem. You get halfway in, and you reflect on what the problem was. How do you feel about it now? And you walk back, leaving the problem behind. That's basically the the pre-mit of it.
Okay.
And Jenny is telling me this. I'm looking at this green field, and I'm saying, you must, I was a little bit less enthused about all things holistic as I am now. But I said, so standing in the field is going to make me feel better. And she says, yes. So I'm always game for anything. So I walked into the labyrinth. And I've got to say, hand on heart, I felt absolutely wonderful when I come off that.
That is amazing.
It really was. It's a fantastic feeling. And I still go there, that one at Hilton, not every minute of every day, but, if I'm ever going past from somewhere, I'll pop along and just have a little walk around. And I did it a few weeks ago. So that's a labyrinth. Now, I thought, if I could get the energy of that walking in the labyrinth, forget the problem thing about it, but just feel the energy, bringing the energy of the labyrinth with the balance procedure.
Yes.
So what I did, I've got it here, I can show you if you want to describe it better than me. I've got the labyrinth, and I've got the cards all round the outside.
Yeah.
So you walk in to your labyrinth, and on the outside rim, because you go in one way and out the other, and you pass the symbols. You take a breath and balance on the first symbol.
Yeah.
Walk or use your fingers. You can have finger labyrinth as well, which is what this is. And you walk your finger into the next one, and you take another breath and balance. Now, I found having the thought of knowing that these shadow memories are there and your reaction to that thought. I'm sick and tired of these shadow memories. I'm fed up being depressed about, and I don't know what's causing it.
Yeah.
I know it's in these shadow memories, so I'm really getting a bit annoyed, angry, frustrated, embarrassed. I've got this going on. So you get a bit of feeling about it.
Yeah.
And you bring that feeling into your labyrinth.
Okay.
And you walk the labyrinth, either, like I say, a finger labyrinth, or you do the physical labyrinth.
Yeah.
You just walk the labyrinth with that feeling of being frustrated, whatever it is you've got going on, and walk out of it again. Now, I've done it. I've sent people a few of these. They're for sale on the website as well, but not very. But they're £3 something, I think. But it's a card with a picture of a labyrinth and my balance procedure cards on the outside. And I'm not kidding you. One lady, she phoned me up. She'd been in a really horrific incident. She got assaulted badly. All sorts of things going on. Her relationship was in a rocky period. She was going to a terrible place, and she was phoning me, crying her eyes out. So I sent her the labyrinth. I'd only just literally developed it that week. I've sent her a copy of it, and she's been balancing on, because she said, I don't know what the balance on. I can't think of what I want. She says, I just feel so frustrated and angry. And all that. So that's what I sent her the labyrinth. She said, I just sat there in the corner on my chair and spent 15 minutes doing exactly what you just said. I've got all the instructions at the back here.
Yeah.
And she says, I've never felt so relieved. My husband did the same thing a few minutes later, and we both made up virtually on the spot. Everything just changed.
Well, that's incredible. I will put this information for the listeners actually in the show notes, so they can see a link to the website and get hold of this information.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't like this trawling the past, but it's there.
Yeah.
So just get annoyed about that fact. Just annoyed that that's still bothering you after all these years. We're all.
You have to feel it to heal it.
You want to get some. You need a feeling. You need a feeling to bring in with you.
Yeah.
So,
I always say to people, if you want to clean your house, you have to find the dirt, don't you? And it's only for a short amount of time. You're not going to open up a whole can of worms, but you need to feel it.
The idea of the dirt rather than the dirt, I'd say.
The idea of the I like that.
Yeah. Keep it to a sort of feeling thing. It has to be a feeling thing.
Yeah.
And I was just saying that was just one example. I've done about 4 or 5, probably about 5 or 6 mind body spirit fairs.
Yeah.
And I've brought the labyrinth in that with me.
Yeah.
And what I normally do is stand up and ask people. And this is another thing I've found since the COVID years. You ask people today, what is it you want? What do you want? What's your ambitions and all that? And there's so many people say, I don't know. And it really it's like somebody's pulled the cork on something. The whole, in these mind, body, spirit fairs, you always had somebody was saying, I've got a new relationship. I've got this new job. I want to do this. And can you show me how that will help?
Yeah.
And you get excited about things and get them moving forward. And they go, really brilliant and all that. But nowadays, it's one after the other come up to me and say, I don't know.
The world has changed a lot,
it really
hasn't it?
And it's another reason why I brought this labyrinth thing in. And I said, well, just sit there. I always have 2 chairs in the mine, but I said, let me just carry on what I'm doing. Just sit back here, and then just follow my instructions.
Yeah.
And just tell me what you think, and I'll go around and do what I'm doing. And get back to him a few 20 minutes later, or something like that. How do you feel now? So I don't know how to explain it. I just feel I've had a weight lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah.
I just feel so differently. And I said, you think of something you want to do now? Well, actually, now you said it, I want this and want that.
Yeah, it
and
just clears the
just,
mind,
just
doesn't
gets
it?
you going
So
again.
you can focus again.
Exactly.
So it sounds like a fantastic tool, like meditation and all of these other things that you can do. It sounds so simple.
Well, that's probably our worst enemy in us, in our balance procedure, because it is so simple.
Yeah.
And people say it, and they say, that can't do that.
Yeah.
It can't be that easy. But it is.
So it's worth trying.
Well, there's that aspect to it
Absolutely.
as well. But the thing is, you think about it, everything starts with a thought. Everything starts with a thought. So if you're thinking all the time, I feel terrible, I hate this, my life, and that's what you're going to attract. But you could just change it like so and say, no, actually, I want to do this, I want to feel that. And everything will work. It doesn't matter what it is. Everything works.
It's working with the law of attraction.
Of course, that's in it as well.
So I get people say to me, oh, well, the law of attraction doesn't work for me. Well, if you're saying that out loud, that is the law of attraction not working for you, isn't it?
And they often say, well, I want him to change.
Yes, yeah.
That's the big one.
Yeah, it
especially
is,
in
isn't
couples.
it? Yeah.
I want him to
If
change.
only.
If only he wasn't like this.
Wow. It's so interesting, Alan. I'm so pleased that you've come today and explained how it works. And there'll be a lot of people out there that haven't heard about the balance procedure. So I will definitely put more information on the show notes for people to find out about it. So talking about grief and your experience, a lot of people I talk to about grief often feel uncomfortable, especially with people who struggle to find the right words to say. Have you encountered this, and what words would you choose to express your condolences to somebody?
I have until just lately. This, what I said to you earlier about this intense
Sadness. Yeah.
That's something I'm really going to push from now on. I mean, I'm going to have that in my mind all the time. But be honest with you, I've always found it difficult when somebody's passed, because I don't. Everybody dies.
Yeah.
I mean, I know
nobody gets out of this life alive.
Exactly. And of course, once you get that in your head, I mean, I know Jenny died suddenly. There was nothing wrong with her as far as we knew, and she was perfectly healthy. But it was her turn. And we all have our turn to die. So I don't know how you can grieve that. You have to accept it because it's a fact. Yeah. So once you get past that side of it, that, to me, it takes a lot of the stuff out. It takes a lot of the grief out. Obviously, I'll miss her. Yeah. And with the whole family, we had on the day she died, I made sure everybody came to the hospital because they weren't going to see her again. She wasn't going to be put in a coffin that you could go and visit. You weren't going to have the chance to bury her in the traditional sense. So with my son, my daughter, my grandson, the older one, we all got round Jenny in the hospital bed when she'd passed, and we all said our own individual goodbyes and a collective goodbye, and that was our way of handling it. And they all pretty much have the same effect, have the same feeling that I do with it. I said to my grandson, he was 13 at the time, 12 at the time, I think. I said, what do you think about Nanny dying? He said, I hate her dying. She said, I wanted to be here. I said, but what about, did you enjoy having Nanny around? Yes, he said, she was wonderful. I got great with her. I said, well, keep that in mind. I said, you think that she'll be there for you anytime you want her to be. And he had the same idea as me. Yes, I can see what you mean, Grandad, He wasn't going to be falling apart and the rest of it, because he was, he was happy, not happy, he was connected to Jenny.
Yeah.
And he probably still is now, probably more than anybody, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I'm 8 years down the road now, and I haven't forgotten anything about Matthew. But I think in the beginning, one of my biggest fears was that I might forget what he looked like, what he sounded like. And I think this is quite a common fear for a lot of people going through grief. Was this something you ever experienced?
No. I think what I just said answers most of that.
Yeah.
Once you come to terms with it, and I think it's when you don't come to terms with it, is when you have all these extra memories, the the stuff that can come in, like you just said about the remembering their names and all that sort of thing. That only come in if you can't come to terms with it. And I think the sooner you can come to terms with it, the better. You know.
Absolutely. I think remembering the good times, like the laughter, the fun, and focusing in on the happy times keeps their memory alive. And I always say that the memories they leave behind are the gifts for us to keep. And these memories can save us. So what is your favourite memory of Jenny?
Oh, Christ. I think that first meeting, I've never got over that.
Oh.
Yeah, honestly, I came in there and she's sitting on the throne, on the back of this throne, on the back of the carnival procession.
Carnival Queen.
Yeah, Carnival Queen. I mean, looking up and my jaw dropping. How beautiful can you get? And she was. I mean, she was an absolute beauty. And when she said yes to me, go out with me next week, I mean, I've floated home that day. You know? And like I said, there's so many. We did everything together. I mean, we cycled from John O'Groating, Scotland, down to Cambridge, 700 miles in a week, 100 miles a day, her at the back of the tandem. I mean,
so you must have so many memories.
Well, there's too many. And I enjoyed every second of it. Yeah. And that's what I look back on. I enjoyed every second living with her, and I can't feel this great grief because it's not there. She was such a nice. I feel so grateful and so, to be part of that.
That is so good to hear.
And that's how I feel about it.
I mean, I've had clients. One lady that comes to mind. She was married for 55 years, had the most amazing marriage, 3 children, grandchildren. They travelled the world together. And then her husband got ill and 2 years later died. And the story was very similar. I resonated a lot with her about the care that he received and the treatments that he received. And she focused all her time on those last 2 years. All the things that should have been done, could have been done. She didn't think about the 55 years of happiness. And so, working with her just changed her perspective. So we can't change that. You can write letters and say, I'm not happy about this in the hope that other people don't get treated like that. But then focus on the 55 years. And I think that is where the magic happens, isn't it? When it come into this intense sadness, this grief, just focus your attention on the relationship that you had and the good times and
it's
the
the
good
only
memories.
way, because what she was doing there, she was looking for somebody to blame. I mean, you can't blame somebody for dying. I mean, people die, and especially if you have the illness, at least you can put a handle on it. I mean, in my case, there was no reason Jenny should die. Absolutely no reason. At least in the explanation, the thing what you just said there, having that 2 year, it gives you the time, if you like. This is, I say to a lot of people now, while the people are still alive, for God's sake, get yourself visiting people, visiting your dad.
Tell them tell them you love them.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you'll find the grief will be less, and maybe that's where she should be now. Like you say, focus on the best times, and that's the way to go forward with it. But you can't blame someone for dying.
No.
It's silly.
No. I think it's just the mind trying to process something, trying to make sense of something that you find difficult.
Yeah.
So But do you feel that this intense sadness, this grief, has changed you in any way?
In the respect that you don't take us for granted about things, I mean, it's got to be my turn. I mean, I in fact, I'd like to go the exact same way Jenny did, to be honest. I mean,
it's a good way to go. It's hard for the people left behind, but it's a good exit out of this world, isn't it?
That will suit me down to the ground. If that happens to me, like it happened to her, the thing I'm worried about more than anything is getting something like dementia or something, and I'm sitting at home somewhere. Yeah. And I don't want that.
Yeah. And, well, you think about your family then, don't you? Because when the person with dementia doesn't realise, but it's hard for the family and friends. Yeah. So where would you say you are in your grief journey now?
Well, like I say, I don't. I think I've put it I put it in a place where I don't have to go back to it too often. I mean, I'm busy as well. I've got 4 different part-time jobs. Yeah. I see a lot of the kids. I love being with the grandchildren, especially the 5 and 3-year-old. Is to have those energy of the kids around me. take them to the park quite regularly, and I just keep myself busy, and I don't dwell on anything. And I like to work. I like to be out.
Yeah,
I like to wear a bit.
very active, aren't you?
I go down to the gym a lot. So, yeah, I don't tend to look back. Never didn't before, and I don't like doing it now.
Yeah.
But I've just got I feel Jenny around me. I feel I've done it. We had a great relationship, and I don't feel any sad. I mean, apart from the fact she's not here, I haven't got any negativity about it at all. So I'll just keep that in my mind and move forward and keep going. I mean, you never know where I'm going to go next. I mean, I don't know.
What are your thoughts about the afterlife?
Well, I've always thought we've come down to planet Earth to enjoy life here as human beings. You know, we're spirit coming into living in planet Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lovely poem. You must have heard the Dash.
The Dash?
The Dash.
I know, I haven't.
You haven't. It starts, I don't know the full, I'll paraphrase it for you. You start with the date of your birth and the date of your dying, and it's the dash in between.
Okay.
Is what you want to focus on. And the last words in the poem is, how would you like your funeral, your eulogy described? What did you do with your dash? So it's the dash, it's the important bit. So that's basically the answer to everything. Live your life the best way you can. And to what is, you know, and that's why I think you've come down to you don't get yourself in a box of, poor me, you know, I'm sick, I'm ill, I can only do this is my only way of looking at things. Box yourself into that, have an expanded lifestyle, look forward, open your heart, get out there, meet people, make plenty of friends, go places and expand your life and live the best way you can. Don't do any harm to anybody. That's the way forward for me.
I like it. I'll check the Dash out.
Yeah, it's a good poem.
Yeah, I like the sound
Jenny
of
used to like to. She said when that comes up, she was always pleased to read it out.
Yeah. So you feel Jenny around you. Do you believe our loved ones can give us signs?
Yes, definitely. I was just before I came here, I was visiting my niece, who lives here in Leamington as well, and my sister died about 6-7 years ago, and she was just in her early 30s, and she says, and her new baby, she wasn't born when her mum was there. She's 4 now. She talks about her nanny all the time, and she believes nanny lives at number 1.
Yeah.
They live at number 3, and she thinks she talks about it if she's still alive. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
No. So have you had any signs?
I can't put a finger on it. I've got a feeling if I do something I shouldn't be doing, and I'm getting a bit of a kick up the backside by not doing a lot of things. But more of a feeling thing again. I think you can only go with your feelings.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing. And I think because you and Jenny had such a close relationship, there's nothing left unsaid.
No, exactly.
Absolutely. And I think when it's your time, the pair of you have left such a fantastic legacy with the balance procedure. It's incredible. So thank you so much for joining me today as a guest. It truly is a privilege to have a man who is willing to open up and discuss his feelings. Society expects men to suppress their emotions, making it difficult for them to talk. And although we're getting better at talking about mental health, when it comes to grief and loss, we have a long way to go. So, Alan, I appreciate your openness and your honesty in sharing your story and your experience of grief. Intense sadness. We'll call it intense sadness.
I think that's got to be that's really important.
Like that.
I think it's really important to change the word. I think grief's way overused.
Yeah.
Way overused.
Well, I will add your contact details and information, especially about the incredible balance procedure, in the show notes for our listeners. So thank you, Alan. I know Jenny will be very proud of you.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thank you for listening to this episode of A Gift for Grief. Please feel free to share it with your friends and family, and let's encourage others to become more grief literate. If you're struggling with your grief or worried about your mental health, please do speak to your doctor. If you would like to join me on my social media groups, check out the show notes for all the links. and I look forward to connecting with you next time. The music on this podcast was written and recorded by Matthew Bates and can be found on his 2 albums, Fight Back and Kaleidoscope.